Hello, everyone. Hello, Samantha.
Hello, Katie. Hello, everyone. We're back.
Well, how are ya?
I'm all right. Overwhelmed with life, but that's not unusual for me. How are you?
Pretty good. I'm untethered from reality in general, but I feel like today I'm especially disconnected from this plane of existence, so get ready to carry this episode on your back.
Crap, Katie. I was hoping you were going to carry this episode. I think it's okay to be disengaged from reality. It's just hard when you try to step back into it for a little bit sometimes.
This is true.
Which is kind of a reflection of the topic, I feel like, as well.
It actually kind of is.
So today, we hope to talk to you guys about something that occurs for folks when they transition off trail that has kind of been coined post-trail blues or post-trail depression. So it is basically what it sounds like, and after a person leaves the trail, sometimes they'll hit a lull or a low spot in their life, and that is what is called post-trail blues. And what that usually looks like for folks is perhaps social disengagement, a loss of sense of self, perhaps low ambition, and even severe depression. And I've even read it described as reverse culture shock, which I kind of like that. I felt like that was fitting.
It is. I like that phrase.
Now, this isn't to be confused with just physical trail fatigue, which is also very real. You can get off trail and your body's exhausted. You might be slightly dehydrated, underfed, overworked, all these things. So I think that post-trail fatigue initially can kind of feel like depression, but that's not really what we're talking about. But I think it's worthwhile to check in with yourself, like, am I physically taking care of my needs when I get off trail, And that might alleviate some of that feeling. But often this emotional kind of fallout can last for quite a while for folks. In fact, doing our research and reading about it, it seems pretty hard to avoid and extremely common and pretty likely if you're going to spend any amount of time on trail that you may hit a low spot when you get off trail. It's a pretty fascinating topic. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of research about specifically post-backpacking or hiking experiences, but there are some studies that have found the occurrence in endurance athletes after they finish their events, and also I read some about college athletes that can struggle with post-activity depression. It's super fascinating.
It is. Yeah, I was going to say it's not necessarily something that's unique to backpackers in general. I definitely came across kind of the post-race blues articles about that, and also Olympic athletes, I guess. So another term that I came across that kind of presented it in a very generalized way was Post Adrenalin blues. And there was an article in Psychology Today just called Post Adrenalin blues. And the author was Dr. Eileen Kennedy Moore. And I did want to say that the tone of this article was basically just speculation based off of different clients that she has worked with. It was not research-backed, so it's all anecdotal. But anyway, with that in mind, she talked about post-adrenaline blues striking after an intense, sustained effort that ends abruptly. So the examples that she gave in this article were not really nature or even athletic-based.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she was talking more along the lines of a wedding or maybe a big work project with a deadline, something that you've pushed hard to get to or maybe have put in like a long burst of effort and then it's just over. And so she talks about how this period of post-adrenaline blues comes with feelings of depletion, dissatisfaction, and a sense of questioning everything about one's life, which I found very relatable.
Same.
I'm like, you could not have put that more perfectly, frankly. In these cases, she was saying that it usually lifts after a few days, up to a week or more. So maybe depending on what the thing was, that could kind of determine
how long it took, all these things.
Right. So she did kind of describe a few different things. And another one I thought of was maybe like even a vacation, because I have had other trips that were not necessarily backpacking trips where I did experience a little bit of that. when I came home. So that was another one I kind of thought of. But anyway, she kind of describes how, regardless of what the scenario is, that this long sustained effort and then abrupt end seem to be what actually triggers it. So she speculated that it could be comparable to the rebound or the withdrawal effects that commonly pop up in research on addiction, that show when a person stops using a substance, they frequently feel much worse than they did before they took the substance. So she was saying it's possible that the abrupt withdrawal of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline could be a part of post-adrenaline blues. She also speculated that it could be psychological in nature, perhaps stemming from the contrast between the expectation that you had for the thing versus the reality of how you felt about it once it actually happened. That maybe you just expected it to go a certain way, or even just expected to feel a certain way about it, and then the reality was different. Also, that maybe it's more about feeling like you don't know what to do with yourself now that the challenge is over.
I resonate with all these things throughout my life, which I hadn't necessarily tied the idea of having those post-trail blues with some of those other experiences, but it is very similar. Now that you mention it, post-vacation, those types of things, I can totally see it.
I felt like the way that she expressed it was very relatable to me. And it is probably because it is coming from many different people that she's spoken to. So there was something kind of comforting in that too, just to feel that connection and know that it is pretty common even outside of backpacking, like you said. So yeah, basically it's about how we've been putting in this long sustained effort towards a thing, and then the celebration of completing that thing seems to be followed by a sense of letdown. So I found this whole article very interesting, and I think that in backpacking or in athletic pursuit in general, there is all of this, but I think there's maybe even more to it than there might be in some of these. So in a lot of the examples that she provided, she did seem to focus more about the stress and the stress hormones. And stress is definitely involved in backpacking, but I also feel like it's not the type of stress you would be dealing with when you're trying to plan a wedding. You know, a completely different ballgame. And we are also getting all of these positives like the endorphin releases, the positive physiological effects of moving our bodies and being immersed in nature, which we talked a lot about in our mental health and nature episode.
Yeah.
So there is a lot going on, both positive and negative, and then we reach that abrupt end. So with all of her observations in mind, I think it kind of makes a lot of sense that it is a trigger for that.
It makes total sense. That's really interesting.
So another resource that I came across was talking about post-race blues. The author of this one was David Roche, and it was in Trail Runner magazine. And again, it was all kind of speculation-based theories, not a lot of research out there to really back up any of this. So one of the theories was that it could involve situational depression, where the blues have developed a reaction to an outside stimulus. Stimulus.
That's stimulus.
Damn stimulus. Anyways, in this article, they gave some examples of maybe a poor race or an injury. And this did kind of make me think back to Dr. Kennedy Moore's suggestion of the expectation versus reality thing. Because based on some of my experiences, I don't think that you really need an injury or a major issue to still experience kind of that feeling of letdown, or of it maybe not being what you wanted, or maybe it's exactly what you wanted, but you kind of expected that high to last when you got off trail and it didn't. So that one kind of made sense to me. They also spoke on arrival fallacy, which is a term that was coined by positive psychologist Tal Ben-Shahar. He's the author of Happier, if you're interested in looking for that book. It describes a scenario in which reaching a long-term goal actually reduces happiness levels, since the atmosphere of growth was what mattered all along.
Oh gosh, that's not fair.
I know. That one both made sense to me, but annoyed me as well. I don't know why.
Same.
I was like, ugh. But I want both. They also theorized in this article that it could be a combination of many things, some of which included a type of post-achievement letdown, where achieving the goal yields a sense of purposelessness that manifests similar to other depressive episodes. perhaps evolutionary, and more about not letting your guard down after the example they gave, killing the antelope because a lion could come at any moment and complacency will get you killed. Perhaps biological, again, with the stress hormones. Cortisol is released during challenging events, which affects homeostasis in the endocrine system. This is probably unnecessary, but I did write down that our endocrine system is basically the glands and organs that make hormones and release them directly into our blood so they can travel to our tissues and organs. These hormones control countless important body functions. And then homeostasis is just equilibrium, so balance. They also suggested it might be genetic, where family history of clinical depression could have an impact on it. Perhaps hormonal, coming from a lack of endorphins in the days following an event.
Ding, ding, ding.
At the end, finally, they said maybe it's just a byproduct of trying to get by in a complicated world. Which, I mean...
Yeah.
So I would venture to say that it's probably a little bit of all of these things. Maybe some of them different for different folks.
Agree. Well, those are some interesting studies, and I can definitely relate to some of that. Some other research that I found myself really drawn to has been done by a woman named Dr. Ann K. Baker. So it sounds like Ann is a big backpacker herself and kind of a self-described gear junkie from what I read.
Yes.
And she has done a bit of her own research when it comes to post-trail blues and post-trail depression. And I don't know about you, but a lot of what she wrote about really resonated with me.
Yes, I actually listened to 2 different podcasts after reading the article just because I liked it so much, what she had to say.
Yes.
I also came across her article in the Trek, The Post-Trail Depression, It's Not What You Think. She was honestly kind of one of the ones that popped up maybe first or most frequently, because I do think she's done more than others. And for this particular article, she interviewed 23 hikers in one lasher, which I felt like I knew what it was, but I did look it up to make sure, and it's a long-ass section hiker.
Is that what we are sometimes?
I think so, and I kind of love it. Like, I'll take it.
Yeah.
So she interviewed them about their transition from trail to normal life, and she basically honed in on the common threads in all of the interviews and narrowed it down to 5 main aspects, which I think you had a lot more than I did on, so I'll let you go into that.
Well, I think really what she was asking is what is loved about being on trail and what is missed afterwards. And so she kind of came up with this really clever acronym, which in the article she was funny. She's like, what kind of researcher would I be if I didn't create an acronym? But it's the acronym SPACE, SPACE. And so we're talking about these elements of what makes the transition so difficult off of trails. So the S in SPACE stands for simplicity. Most people, when they're backpacking, have fewer obligations as compared to their daily lives. Their experience is simplified to mostly just surviving out there. I think in our regular lives, we can be pretty overwhelmed and dissatisfied. And I read about something called the choice paradox, which is basically where we have too many options and it leads to less life satisfaction. And that's something you don't really have when you're on trail, is a plethora of options.
Yeah.
The simplicity of kind of basing our days around nature, rising and resting with the sun, can feel very innate. It can be hard for people to leave trail and go back to their responsibilities and financial concerns. On trail, there is a true lack of that materialism and consumerism that is so prevalent in society, and it can kind of make our world seem very superficial when we return to it.
Mm-hmm. Is that reverse culture shock?
I think so.
That's kind of how I can't even think of the word, interpreted it.
Yeah.
Good Lord, help.
Send help. And it can't be, ignored that some hikers may be returning to bad situations, whether financial trouble, bad relationships, all these things. So I think that simplicity of being on trail is something that I know that I desperately miss when I leave.
Absolutely.
The P in the acronym of SPACE stands for purpose. when we're on trail, it feels like our values and our purpose are stripped down to their core and become very obviously evident to us. It can be hard to find purpose in our daily lives. And when we're on trail, we're working to complete goals, both in the overall picture of like, I'm going to complete the trail, but also just in daily moments or even just minute by minute. We can even just set small goals through ourselves throughout the day, which I know I do this all the time. You know, like get to a certain point by sundown or finish this climb and take a break. And having that purpose and those types of goals turns out feels really good. And when we get off trail, sometimes we have a hard time finding purpose. The A in the SPACE acronym stands for adventure, fun times, and also learning to accept the uncertainty of the situation. The C stands for community. Trail people tend to really connect with one another. It makes sense. Generally, people are pretty like-minded on trail. But I also just think that when you're out there, somehow you feel liberated to be your true self. And that is accepted when you're on trail.
Yeah.
And there is this feeling of acceptance for whatever you are, whoever you are. And I think returning to more superficial interactions afterwards can be really difficult and feel pretty impossible. Totally relate with that one as well.
Me too. And I did just want to add on, I noticed, I don't know if it was in her article or in one of the podcasts, but she did mention someone she interviewed who, when they were speaking on community, it wasn't just about their trail family, but also the people they encountered as far as like where they stayed, people that offered rides or trail magic. And there was sort of this sense of like, man, can you imagine a world where everybody treated you that way or treated each other that way? And
so caring.
Yeah, it did kind of get the wheels to turning, because I could see where if you were doing a really long through hike and you just met so many people who were so happy to go out of their way to help you and take care of you and, you know, just wanted this for you, it would be, I think it would make it harder to come back and see the way they'll like go to Walmart and see how people treat each other.
Very true. I read a couple of interesting accounts where these guys were like solo through hiking and times got hard and lonely. And if it wasn't for the work of some trail magic or some trail angels reaching out and caring for them, they may have not finished. So I think people can feel supported on trail in ways that they really don't back home necessarily.
It is beautiful.
It is beautiful. I agree. I also think it's beautiful. So finally, the E in the acronym SPACE stands for exercise. So extreme exercise, like backpacking, it results in mega endorphins. There's better terminology than that, but
I like that though.
kind of retracting those endorphins after trail can actually result in a biochemical withdrawal in your body. Also, I just wanted to throw out there that coming off of trail and you're used to working so hard and having so much physical activity, needing to adjust your diet is probably something that will need to happen. I've read that weight gain is extremely common. So I think that the exercise, it's kind of a double-edged thing there, because it's not just like the endorphins that it's giving us, and then the withdrawal of said endorphins, but it's also a slowing of metabolism. There's other elements of what all that physical exercise does for us besides just improve our endorphins. So I think sometimes getting back on good eating habits and taking care of yourself and not overeating can be a challenge for folks coming off trail.
Yeah, I did have a tidbit that I didn't know where to stick, but I did want to just mention that, you know, mostly we've been focusing kind of on the depression or the sense of purposelessness, but I have read that a part of this can kind of manifest in like a disordered relationship with food and eating, or even substance abuse issues, escalating if you already had them, or even developing if you didn't. So that's kind of maybe a more extreme version, but definitely something to keep in mind if you maybe have a tendency towards either of those things to begin with. Well,
and we're going to talk maybe a little bit later about how to deal with it, but I don't know if you think that much about your post-trail goals and plans, but I don't, so that is something I can work on in the future, is like having a game plan in place for readjusting my body and mind.
I need that because I feel like I just try to ride that high, and it's amazing how quickly reality settles back against my will.
I tend to not make great dietary choices when I get back, which is so frustrating to me because all I crave is like super healthy foods, but also I just like eat everything.
Yeah.
So just to be more prepared for that, and I don't know, I think it could be helpful for me. I don't know, what do you think about the SPACE acronym?
I love it, and I'm glad that you went into it. I didn't really write much down. They all make a lot of sense to me. One of them that stood out to me about like the adventure part was that a lot of people she interviewed, she said it was funny how they ended up focusing on like the negatives almost, but not in a bad way. They'd be like, oh man, this one day it just rained on us the entire time. So it was kind of like a type 2 fun situation where that was really what stood out to them as a good memory, even though in the moment it was so hard, which I kind of relate to.
Kind of in the overcoming. Like I was faced with an uncertain situation and I overcame, and that's powerful stuff.
It is. It makes you feel good. But I did kind of like how, speaking on the extreme exercise, Dr. Baker did mention that she's a doctoral candidate studying pain and reward processing and opioid addiction. So she did kind of admit that the extreme exercise element was what really piqued her interest in particular. And I did write down one passage that I wanted to read verbatim. It might not be necessary because it's kind of just reiterating what you just said, but I kind of liked it. So she said, as many readers are probably aware, exercise releases endorphins, specifically beta endorphins. These are essentially your body's own opioids. They're responsible for the so-called runner's high you've perhaps heard about or experienced firsthand, and they're actually more powerful than morphine.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, whoa. From the lens of neurobiology, the amount of exercise involved in a through hike or lash almost inevitably puts nearly all hikers at risk for what is called an opponent process. And so then she goes on to describe opponent process theory as what goes up must come down. So in theory, post-trail blues could be a form of withdrawal from the emotional highs generated by long periods of endorphin release. And that sounds like a very casual sentence, but if you're thinking about, like you said, mega endorphins, like not just on one day even, it's so sustained. Like you've had so much for an extended period of time. So it is kind of a withdrawal. Like it makes so much sense to me to think about it that way.
A lot of the articles that I read really compared it to being high, which is funny. You're like talking about morphine and opioids. And then a withdrawal from that, just like an addict. So that's really interesting, and it makes sense. It's kind of scary, though, a little bit. It's scary. Powerful.
And there's a parallel, too, to that very first article that was just about post-adrenalin blues, because that doctor mentioned that as well.
Right.
That similarity. So, yeah, I would really love to see more research come out focused on this. I was a little surprised that there wasn't more, or really any necessarily, because a lot of these are, I mean, Dr. Baker's was probably structured the most. Like, she structured it really well, and she is a scientist.
Right. It's super interesting.
So the other thing that I really loved about Dr. Baker, and she mentions this in the article, but I did listen to an interview with her, and she was expressing to the host how surprised she was by the way identity became such an important piece of these conversations that she was having. She wasn't really expecting that to come up, but it did over and over and over again kind of come out where people really develop this sense of identity on trail that I think kind of goes back to what you were saying about community, and maybe like the way that you connect with people is so different because you are all maybe being a more vulnerable and authentic version of yourself out there, because in the back of your mind, there's kind of this, whoa, if I fudge up this first impression, like, I think the way she put it in the interview was like, I could either camp one more day here and let you get ahead, or I'm going to hike ahead of you and I never have to see you again. You know, like, kind of that stranger aspect, which I can kind of relate to. But she was talking a lot about how you develop this sense of identity on trail that's a little bit that, but it is a little bit overcoming those adversities or those uncertainties and just feeling like the best, most powerful, awesome version of yourself. And she was saying a lot of people expressed it as there's real life them and trail them, and they didn't want to go back to being real life them, and I can definitely relate to that.
For sure. I completely agree. In fact, I had made some notes after reading Dr. Baker's articles, and I totally agree with their SPACE acronym, but she kind of takes it further and explores how it's all kind of a reflection of the relationship with self.
Yeah.
You know, and like you were saying, people tend to really like the version of themselves that emerges on trail.
I do.
I do too. It's my favorite version of myself.
I want to be Trail Katie all the time.
You know, like, oh, have you guys not met her? She's great.
I need to channel Trail Katie when I'm trying to survive the grocery store and I'm just like overwhelmed.
Yes. Well, I mean, I don't know. When I'm on trail, I know I feel strong, confident, capable, happy. I feel like people do feel more free to be themselves. There's not as much room for pretension, and I tend to feel more connected to the whole world around me. I find backpacking helps overcome self-limiting thoughts and beliefs, and I know I'm not the only one that feels that way. So, you know, returning to our regular lives, we can sometimes feel like we've changed significantly and maybe don't fit into our previous world the same way that we used to.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's a little bit of a struggle to not feel like I'm living life to the fullest in a way that I do when I'm on trail. And it's just hard to reproduce that mental freedom in my real world.
I don't know if you can. I think that the word fit works really well for me as a descriptor, because on trail, if I think of myself as like a puzzle piece on trail, I feel like I'm back far enough and have the perspective where I can see the whole puzzle and I see where I fit. And then when I'm at home, I'm just that loose piece in the whole box that's like the middle piece with kind of a nondescript color, and you don't know where it goes. It's like the last piece that you figure out where it goes.
Does this even go in this puzzle? They packed a wrong piece.
So it is really hard to reconcile with that when you get back home, because it's difficult to be your trail self in real life. It's possible, and I think maybe that's part of the solution, is to try to work towards being that more authentic, vulnerable, powerful version. But it's really hard.
The no fucks given version. Sorry, everybody.
My absolute favorite thing about Dr. Baker's work was how a lot of the background leading up to it was that she had experienced this and never liked the description of depression. It never felt right to her. And so kind of in summation, she describes it more as a loss. You're losing this space and you're losing this identity that you have in this space. And so she presented it more as grief, and that resonated really strongly with me when I think about what grief feels like versus depression. So that was kind of what made her my absolute favorite among a million other things. I think she's great.
Totally agree. I love how she pivoted towards grief and not depression.
Yeah.
Because I think that is a more accurate way. Not that it can't turn into depression.
Right.
You know, but I love that.
And we will definitely link this article and maybe some others by her as well.
I'm interested in reading more of her work.
Me too. So we talked a little bit about it, but I just kind of wanted to ask you what, through all of what you've read, resonated the most with you, and what your personal experiences have been that you're comfortable sharing.
We've talked about this before. For the first initial couple days off of trail, I feel amazing. Like, high, you know, off the experience. And then those feelings do kick in, those blues. I really struggle. I think I struggle with this anyway, but the superficial nature of most interactions that humans have.
Yeah.
That's a bit hard for me all year long, but especially when I get off of trail. And I had never really been able to pinpoint how I feel different, but I love how she talks about the grief for the person that you are when you're on trail, and that really resonated probably the most for me.
Me as well. Yeah, the superficial, I think it's hard for that not to be an aspect when you've been around people who will openly talk about pooping in the woods.
Right.
Like, there's just such a contrast.
Right. But I think people genuinely tend to care on trail, or if they don't fake it. There's just not much faking one way or the other.
There's too much going on. You're too tired. You know, like, you just don't have the energy for that.
No.
You gotta be real.
You gotta show up in your own shoes. How about you? Is that what resonated the most with you? Like, describing kind of a change in self when you're out there? Or...
Yeah, there were a few. I did, as much as I said I was annoyed by it, I did kind of resonate about how it is more about the journey, and that's why maybe sometimes the end doesn't feel as much like a triumph as it does a loss. Being out there in that space, doing the hard thing, like, that in itself was the high. But I also was kind of thinking about how there's almost this cycle within the trip that is this in itself, like, because you do experience the highs and lows day by day, so it's almost like this stuff like cycles through every day during the trip for me. And I don't know why I was thinking about that, but I was thinking about our longest trip, which was out on the AT, and how I feel like there were moments of post-trail blues still on trail, almost. Because you go through the day and you kind of have some high moments, some low moments. And especially, like, growing towards the end, it's like you're kind of so ready to be done, but you're almost pre-grieving.
Yeah.
Even though maybe the day before you're like, oh, God, I'm so over this.
Right.
So I don't know. It was interesting. But I think that kind of plays into the post-adrenaline blues of, like, that's intense and it's sustained. It keeps going every day. And then you're done. You get to the car and you're done. It's so abrupt.
Even leading up to a long hike, there's a lot of planning. And there's a lot of work. It can take weeks, months. I mean, it could probably take years if you were truly planning, like, a long through hike and whatnot. So imagine all the things you've suddenly been working on are just suddenly over.
Yeah.
Just like that.
That's why that article made a lot of sense to me, because it's true. It's been so much work and so much effort even before you got there, and then it's just over, and suddenly you're supposed to adjust back.
It's all about the journey, not the destination.
God, it's so cheesy, but it's true.
It also is kind of reminding me of something that I experienced a little bit as a kid, and now I see it in my own kids, of, like, a really simple comparison. But I don't know about you, but were you ever sad, like, when your birthday was over?
I think so, probably.
Yeah.
The anticipation.
Yeah, you wait all year.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like my kids are sad before the day's even over, you know.
Oh,
I know.
No, it's a good example, though. I do think it's all the same. So for me, it's also that it feels like going from action to stagnation. And I think that for me, this is maybe more of a personal struggle in general. I always am struggling to find the balance between action and rest, and not viewing any rest as just being stagnant. Being on trail, that is action, but it is simplicity, which, going back to Dr. Baker's, that really stood out to me about this, because it's funny, I had written simplicity down in my notes before I ever read her article, and I'm like, oh, here we go, hitting right away. But yeah, it's not, you know, when you're on trail, it's not a big complicated project or anything. It's just, it is that simple, like not waking with the sun, because we don't get off trail that easy, but you do kind of tie into sun cycles, and all you have to do that day is walk. So I think that's part of it for me. And then in the article that Dr. Baker wrote, I was really struck by her community. I feel like even though we haven't experienced that as much, I still felt sort of drawn to the community, the way that she presented it, because I do feel like it's still something I see reflected in that, like, self-relationship. I think it still applies. Like, I may not, if I go out on the Ozark Trail, I may not encounter trail community at all.
Right.
But I still get, like, a really significant sense of connection to myself. So I do feel, I definitely relate to that. Coming home kind of feels like a grieving of losing that, you know, that part of me, that identity, that connection, that, like, special time that I had with myself out in the woods.
Right. And even if we may not directly run into many humans on the Ozark Trail, I feel like I still feel like I'm a part of a community when I'm out there. And not necessarily just an Ozark Trail community, but just of backpackers, of nature lovers, of people that I may be all alone, but I know there's people out there that I'm sweating and miserable and feeling awful, but I know that there's people out there that totally understand and applaud me, you know.
Exactly.
We kind of all quietly have each other's backs.
Yeah.
I hope.
From afar. That's how I like to think about it.
I hope.
Well, and even walking on the trail, we know what went into making that trail even happen and building it. And there is kind of a sense of community of knowing that some hands and some backs worked really hard to make that exist.
It's a beautiful thing.
It is.
I did notice, and I thought this was interesting, in Dr. Baker's article, she was just talking about some different factors that she has observed can or may not affect post-trail blues experience. She found that gender, age, and mental health history do not predict the prevalence of post-trail blues, which I found kind of fascinating because I think some articles kind of give the impression that maybe if you do have past mental health problems that you may, or you're more likely to suffer from post-trail blues. She doesn't find that that's necessarily true, and I think she even uses that to kind of support the idea that it's not a post-trail depression, but it is a post-trail grief.
I like that.
Which is interesting. She also notes that off-trail employment can contribute to or hinder post-trail negative feelings, which of course makes sense, but depending on how the person feels about their job, and to tie it back into that sense of self, a job can be pretty detrimental to mindset if it feels purposeless, especially after a trail experience. And if you don't see your role there as valuable, then you're more likely to succumb to those types of blues and whatnot.
That does make sense.
But it kind of just brings up for me, I don't know, it seems like a good trail experience kind of holds up a mirror and reflects your life at you, and suddenly it's harder to ignore maybe things you're unsatisfied with, or a job you're unhappy with, relationships you're unhappy with, or that you're struggling in. And I think it maybe can be harder to put yourself back in those spots where you don't fit.
Right. You've had all this time to reflect and maybe find some clarity.
Right. And prioritize your values. And that's the good stuff, though. But it doesn't make it coming home easier for folks.
No.
You know, and I read stories, and I can't even imagine this would be so tough. People just basically sell off about everything they own, you know, and so they get off trail and they're homeless. So that would be stressful.
Yeah, it would.
I feel like some folks are more used to living a nomadic lifestyle, and, you know, they can figure it out. But some people have just given up about everything to be on trail for months or a year at a time. And eventually, when that time comes to an end, they may not really have anything to go back to.
That would be tough. How do you keep from just running back out there? I guess you won't be able to buy food, so.
Right. It's like starting all over.
Yeah.
Every time. So props to you guys, but that sounds difficult to me.
It does.
So let's talk a little bit about prevention and just how to deal with post-trail blues, grief, depression, whatever you want to call it. I really like the grief, though. I find that summarizes my experience pretty well.
Me too.
Did you find any great tips or tricks or just coping mechanisms and methods that we could use to maybe make our transition off a trail a little smoother, a little easier?
I found a couple in the Post Adrenalin Blues article. Dr. Kennedy Moore's recommendations were basically to treat yourself gently as you would if you were recovering from a physical ailment like the flu. So eating well, resting often, lower energy movements like walks or yoga. And then she also recommended reaching out to your inner circle, especially if you found yourself neglecting or avoiding the connections as kind of a part of the blues.
And then that disengagement.
Right. And then she also kind of just warned against making any major decisions while in that mindset, which I don't know if that's relevant here, but it seemed like a really interesting aside. And so
I love it, but at the same time, part of me wants my post-trail self to make all the decisions.
Right? Let me hand over the reins.
Yeah.
So that was kind of an interesting one.
I get it, though. I know what they're saying.
Sell everything.
Yeah. Like, don't light your house on fire or anything.
Yeah. And then with the SPACE acronym in mind, I did kind of see that just incorporating some of those elements that we did find so much value in, trying to find ways to incorporate them into our normal lives would be a good way to go. To just kind of remember that we can be Trail Katie and Trail Sam, and maybe not to the same extent, but maybe focus in on certain elements of that and try to cultivate that type of simplicity and purpose off trail. Hold on to confidence in ourselves, things like that. I don't know how. That's the suggestion. I don't have the course of action.
I actually end all of my notes with like questions. Like, you guys are supposed to tell us, right?
Yeah.
Some prevention ideas or just coping techniques that I have noted here. One of which is just to have a plan of how you're going to deal with that grief and with those blues before you even begin your hike. To be accepting of the possibility you're going to feel down and be accepting of the probability that you're going to feel different when you return, and that's okay, and to not expect it all to feel the same, kind of adjusting our expectations or maybe just not trying to have so many. I also read that it's important to just let yourself feel it. Explore your emotions. Listen to what they're maybe trying to tell you and where they may be guiding you. They may not be misguided at all.
Maybe you need to make some major decisions.
Right. Exactly. Something I read is recommended, and I think this is all the time, right? But this is something that maybe comes a little bit easier on trail, is just to try to stay present and in each moment. And that is something I think that changes when you leave trail. So just try to get back to that more present mindset can be helpful. As Katie said, physical self-care, eat well, lots of exercise to get those sweet endorphins back. I read that it can be very important to set new goals. All the goals.
A new gold standard. Standard of excellence.
I read that it's important to set new goals to work towards too, and to give time to explore other passions.
Yeah.
Other things that stoke your fire, not just backpacking. Seeking out moments of solitude can be helpful. Reaching out to your trail family and just maybe people that were actually on your backpacking experience, or people that maybe weren't there with you but that just get it, because some people get it. I love this one. A suggestion for getting over your grief is to give back to the trail. And in the form of trail magic, trail maintenance, trail adoption, and I could see how that could be super helpful. We've talked a lot about in previous episodes, especially our mental health episode, how exposure to nature is so very good for us, and offers a lot of benefits to our mental health. It can create a withdrawal of sorts when we're just completely removed from the environment. So I would suggest to get outside and try to reap those benefits, even if you're not on trail.
Yeah.
I also saw it recommended to kind of stay connected with a similar schedule, and one that kind of follows nature again, like somewhat rise and fall with the sun.
Yeah, that
Maybe
makes
not
sense.
Change your schedule that much from how it was on trail. And, just seek out other experiences that provide endorphins.
Endorphins.
And there's other things, Limiting social media is probably a good idea. I read that some people struggle when they get home with still seeing people on trail and comparing.
Yeah, I could see that. I think for others it might be the only way they could find a like-minded person to chat with, so that one might be at your own discretion. Maybe you want to find other people who are dealing with, who are where you are, I guess.
Maybe it's about intentional use of social media instead of just scrolling.
Right, maybe put out a post that's like, hey, within one of your private groups.
Right.
See maybe who else has come off trail and is struggling as well.
But maybe not do the doom scrolling that I don't think any of us benefit from whatsoever.
Don't you love that we live in a world where there's now words like doom scrolling.
I know.
They just exist and we know what they are. Oh, Kiki.
We have a puppy visitor. And otherwise, I really touched on the same things that you were talking about, considering how we can incorporate the elements of trail life and who we are on trail into our daily lives. Can we be our trail selves in the real world? Why not? So changing our behavior, making those choices can often bring changes to our mindset and our emotions. So it's kind of interesting.
I'm excited to try to do that. I do think I want to make more of an effort to channel Trail Katie in the ways that I can.
Right. I do think this post-trail grief is a reflection of our values. So I think it's worth considering how we can evolve our daily lives into something closer to what we hold so dear on trail, and bringing those lessons home with us and holding on. It's not easy. So I'm still trying to figure out how to do that. And, I guess the question that it really leaves me with is how can I hold on to and remain closer to this pure version of myself that I experience when I'm on trail?
I like that. I did read through a thread where, and this was a women's hiking group. I don't know if that makes much difference, but they did have a thread where women were talking about their coping mechanisms, and I did write down some that stood out. Some are the same as yours, but I'm going to just go ahead and read them
Yes,
anyway.
please. I'd love to hear them.
So one of them was talking about organizing gear and researching upgrades to their gear and kind of researching future trips, which I kind of feel like is something I do a little bit after a trip. Volunteering, you mentioned this, for something hiking or nature related. Just having someone to share it with who wants to hear about it versus the people who kind of tolerate it, but they're not really interested.
It's hard to find people that really want to hear about, all of it, though.
I know, and it seems annoying, but if you think about it objectively, for someone who didn't experience it, it probably does sound kind of boring.
Oh, I totally get it. I get it.
So I think that's a really big one. Again, trying to incorporate what you liked about trail into your daily life. Eating well, someone specifically mentioned including vitamin D, K, and B12 supplements.
I did read about the D, especially because we're exposed to so much sun when we're out there, and then it can be a really deficit when we get back home.
That makes a lot of sense. And someday I want to do an episode all about the sun and what it does for our bodies, because it's a lot.
I would love that.
I think you mentioned this one as well, making plans for a new goal, even if it isn't a hike. For example, a 5K or some other sort of event that would take maybe training for or just preparing for in the same way. Introspection, mindful reflection, or journaling. One woman said that they use reflecting on their trail experience as a time to also identify what's holding them back and what they wanted more of moving forward. This particular woman ended up selling everything she owned and got into van life. So.
Okay. She really brought her trail self home with her.
She did. I thought that was really, really neat. Therapy or counseling where it might be warranted. Training your body and continuing to move. Gratitude practice, and then connecting with other hikers, maybe in a group or online. Lean on your trail family if you have it. And some people even recommended just starting your own group. Which could kind of combine both connection and setting a new goal or doing a new thing. So I liked those. I did want to mention that for me personally, guilt can be a big aspect of my post-trail blues or grief. I feel like I've just given myself the time to do this incredible thing. I did it. I had a great time. I felt great. And then I came home and descended into a slump. And it doesn't really feel justified because I did the thing, and a lot of people can't do the thing, and I love my home, and so sometimes the way that I feel it doesn't make sense to me in a logical way.
Right. Yeah.
Which it shouldn't have to, but I just tend to feel like I should be in more of a gratitude space. But I also can struggle with allowing myself the time to rest or to treat myself with that gentleness that they recommended, especially if I don't feel particularly physically depleted after a certain trip. And there's also this kind of sense that I need to catch back up on real life. So sometimes it's hard to give myself that time. But I think that's why rephrasing it as grief rather than depression may be very helpful for me in the future, because grief is something I'm unfortunately familiar with, but it also kind of makes me realize I have the tools to deal with that already in my toolkit. And I just can kind of rephrase it to myself as, you may not feel like you need rest, but you do need to process. And I think that could be helpful for me to view it that way.
I like that.
Personally.
It's like making a concentrated effort also to not judge yourself one way or the other when you get home, or what you're doing or not doing, either way.
Which is difficult. And I did just want to say, I did come across a crisis text line for if you find yourself really struggling to get out of this, or maybe it escalates. There is a crisis text line where you can just text hello to 741-741, and they have people who will be available to talk to you at any time.
I love that you mentioned that, and I wanted to say again, I think you'd said speak with a counselor, but if this is something you're dealing with and it feels overwhelming and maybe it's not getting better or getting worse, don't hesitate to seek out professional help, please.
Yes. And as always, we will link everything.
Everything.
All of it.
This whole conversation has kind of just got me curious about other people's experiences so much more. You know, we're not around that many hikers, but it makes me like want to do a survey or something.
It does.
It'd be kind of fun. We could do our own research.
I would also be curious to know, like, what sort of, if you were to really get enough people to participate, what would the differences be between lashers and through hikers? Because, you know, section hikers, for example, we don't really get the opportunity to build a community in the same way that, you know, through hikers do. So it'd be kind of interesting to me to see if there's any sort of deviation in these patterns, or if it is still kind of the same.
And Dr. Baker didn't really find much difference in gender and age, but I'm still curious.
I am too. Because, I mean, another article kind of suggested that factors like that could make an impact, but I don't know.
Yeah, I read an article that kind of suggested that maybe older folks would be less susceptible to it because they are so hopefully set in their identity and know who they are and are hopefully comfortable in their lives.
Yeah.
I might have to start doing an informal survey.
You should.
I mean, I can make it formal, but I'm not a doctor, nor am I a researcher. But who's to say that would stop us from doing some research?
I would love to do the research. I would also just love to see more research being done.
It seems like there is. The articles that I was reading kind of all pointed to the fact that backpacking is kind of a newer sport if you think of it as a sport. I mean, obviously people have been like traversing the world with things on their backs since the beginning of time, but it's a little bit a newer of a hobby in society the way that it is now, and so there isn't really a lot of research, but it's such a growing activity and growing hobby. I'm really excited. I think there is going to be more research.
I could see Dr. Baker kind of leading the charge a little bit. She seemed very passionate about it, but also just very driven.
We really admire you, Dr. Baker. We just really appreciated that you took the time to, I don't know, ask questions.
You should listen back through this and see how many times we said her name. If you'd like to make this a drinking game, take a shot every time we simp over Dr. Baker.
Oh.
Don't. That's not an official recommendation.
No.
Don't do that. So, Trekkies, thanks for tuning in. If you are currently dealing with post-trail blues/grief, we're sorry, hang in there.
It's understandable, though, and you're not alone. Sounds like just about everybody has it in some small form or big form or another. So, you know, hang in there. Reach out to us. Tell us about your experience. We would love to hear about this topic from people that have experienced it, because I think, you know, there's a lot of similarities, but everybody's a little different, and I would love to hear some firsthand accounts.
Me too. And I think there's power in connection like that. Sometimes all you need is to not feel alone or like you're crazy for feeling what you feel.
No, I'd say if you didn't have some post-trail grief, you would be the anomaly, frankly. So you are not alone. And for the rest of you guys, I hope that you found something interesting, or maybe just have a little bit better understanding of the sadness and the grief that can take hold after a nice long hike, and maybe how to deal with it better in the future or more mindfully experience it. I think that's a lot of it, is just being more mindful of what you're going through when you go through it. So I hope we've given you guys a little bit of something that might be able to help in that process.
I hope so. I feel like we've given me something helpful.
Me too. I have some new plays, some new playbook to follow a little bit next time we head out for a long one.
I feel like for me, this may sound weird, but I can almost see for me a good tool sometimes dealing with things to even be like, what would Trail Katie do?
I know. I love that.
You know, like sometimes when you need a little shift in perspective.
Mm-hmm. It's funny how sometimes I feel like I stray away from a truer version of myself, and it's never on purpose. But doesn't it feel good when you like are able to like get back home?
It
that
really
makes
does.
Sense.
Get back home in yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Kinda. It's funny how sometimes at home in myself is when I'm not at home, but on trail.
It's interesting. I think we could probably do a whole episode on how maybe we often try to accommodate others as women, and where that comes from. But I feel like that's something that trail has helped heal me in general, and maybe that's an aspect of it for me coming home, is trying to fight that pattern and continue to have the kind of agency I have over myself on trail.
Yes, I love that.
So,
also, can I just tell you guys that Katie has this shirt on that has the cutest little fish all over it, and they're like jumping in a lake with like reeds and
I love it so much.
Water weeds, and it's just really cute.
It's my last thrift store find, and I plan to wear it until it falls off of me. Also, I feel like an 85-year-old woman that I used to know named Mabel, and that's a good vibe, let me tell you.
I'll tell you, I could see my grandma wearing that, but I mean that in a good way.
Right.
Like, it's really darling, and I would wear the shit out of it if it was mine, so.
She's one of the coolest women that I have ever known to date, so.
So, since we're
we're descending into our rambling as always.
We've left the rails, so we will leave you guys be. But thank you so much for tuning in. And as we said, we hope we can all find a way to bring that magic of the trail at home and keep it with us. But in the meantime, let's just try to keep an eye on each other and look out for each other and keep the community strong. So we love you guys.
We love you. Take care of yourselves. Be gentle with yourselves.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Like I need to chug some water. So we could record sound effects for later use.
I heard myself scratching my arm in the last episode. Like, oh, that's a terrible sound. There's not much I can do with it, but we're trying to get it together once again.
We are, and it's not going well. Oh, God. That hurt. Why did I swallow like that? Is it my turn?
I think it's your turn now.
Thank goodness for editing. I hope that last part is editable because, my God, I lost my train of thought so bad.
Oh, have you been listening to me talk? Like, please. I think it's going to be all right. That's just terrible.
We're really drawn to this woman.